الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. أما بعد, we continue our discussion about shurut as-salah, shurut as-salah, the conditions of the salah. We have seen previously that الشرط لغة إلزام شيء والتزامه. That linguistically the word الشرط, it means to set something as a condition and requirement and to abide by that, to set a condition or to set a requirement in place for the presence of something to be established, And we have seen also briefly the definition of الشرط عند أهل الأصول, يعني الأصوليين, in the science of usul al-fiqh, and that was ما يلزم من عدمه العدم ولا يلزم من وجوده وجود ولا عدم لذاته. And this is the definition and the terminology of the scholars of usul al-fiqh, and that means ما يلزم من عدمه العدم, يعني عدم الحكم. The condition is something that if it's not present, then the thing that the condition is set for likewise is not present. But if the condition is present, it does not necessitate that the ruling will be present or not, and by itself. It does not necessitate that the ruling will be present or not by itself. A condition in this terminology here is something that if it's not present, then the thing that the condition is set for is not present. It's not established. But if the condition is present, it doesn't necessarily mean that the affair the condition is set for will be established or not by itself. Meaning, for example, now we're discussing the issue of صحة الصلاة. This is the ruling that we're discussing, and the conditions for this ruling, which is the correctness of the prayer. The prayer will be considered correct and accepted legislatively if these conditions are met. So if one of these conditions is not present, then the ruling is not present. And if one of these conditions is not brought, then the prayer is not correct, because they're conditions for the correctness of the prayer. So if any one of these conditions is not present, then likewise that ruling is not present, meaning the prayer will not be correct. But if one of these conditions is present, it doesn't necessarily mean that the ruling is present or not, and alone by itself. For example, from the conditions of the salah we have seen is that from the conditions of salah that we have seen is that a person, he will remove the najasa, for example. He will remove the najasa. So possibly a person, he can remove the najasa, but there are other conditions that he has to fulfill likewise. So the fact that he removed the najasa does not require or necessitate that the prayer will be correct or not by itself, until along with that he brings the rest of the conditions and also avoids and stays away from anything that will prohibit that ruling from being established. The presence of one condition does not necessitate or require that the ruling will be present by itself or not. Even a person could bring all of the conditions, in general, meaning they can even outwardly make tahara and the likes like this, and then they could perform all of the conditions, and from them, the tahara, outwardly making the tahara, but their prayer is not accepted because of something that is prohibiting that. For example, a woman on her menses. So she could possibly do all of the conditions and meet all of those requirements, but then there's something that's prohibiting that ruling from being established, and that is the menses. And that is the presence of the menses. And so she's not going to be able to make the tahara, this condition. So the point is that possibly she will bring the actions, even if she made wudu, for example, and then even prayed, it will not be accepted because there's something prohibiting that wudu from being correct and prohibiting that salah from being correct, and that is the presence of the menses. So this is the issue with the shart, with the condition. If it's not there, then the ruling is not there. And if it is there, the ruling will not be established until all of the rest of the conditions are met. And likewise, that which would prohibit the ruling from being established must be avoided. So the point of saying this now is to look at that which is preceded. Because if we understand this issue now, likewise we'll be able to understand another issue from the chapter of Salah. And it's not mentioned here, but we'll mention it along the way in this manner. And it's the issue with a masala called Mubtilat as-Salah. Mubtilat as-Salah, the invalidators of Salah. The invalidators of Salah. We have taken the nawaqid al-wudu, we have taken the nullifiers of wudu. Likewise, there are also Mubtilat as-Salah. But based upon that which we have studied so far with regards to the fourth condition, which was to remove the hadith, now we can see, based upon that, since that's a condition, any time that hadith is present, then the prayer will be invalidated. The prayer will be invalidated. So therefore, from the things that invalidate the prayer is ityan naqid min nawaqid al-wudu. If a person, he were to perform any one of those invalidators of the wudu, because the wudu is a condition for the salah. The wudu is the condition for the salah, the tahara. And what we're talking about here is the minor, the removing the hadith, the minor hadith. So the wudu here is the condition for the salah. So if a person, he performed any of those invalidators while he's in the prayer, then his prayer will be invalidated. Why? Because the wudu was invalidated, and the wudu is a condition for salah. The wudu is a condition for the salah. That's what we have been discussing in the previous classes. And the author, he mentioned وَنَوَاقِضُهُ ثَمَانِيَةٌ. And we have discussed some of those in detail, and we have seen that a number of the people of knowledge mentioned that they're less than 8. That we did not agree entirely with every one of these. So just to review that issue now, to understand that if a person, he were to perform one of these nullifiers of wudu, if one of these nullifiers were to happen to him while he's in the prayer, then likewise his prayer will be nullified. Along with that, his prayer will be nullified. So we have the issue of mubtilat as-salah. Here, this is the issue, and the last part of the fourth condition was nawaqid al-wudu, the nullifiers of wudu. Also, we have the same issue with salah, but they're not called nawaqid in the terminology of the people of knowledge. They call them mubtilat. It's the plural of mubtil. It has the same meaning. But this is just the terminology that they use. So mubtilat is salah, those things that invalidate the prayer. From them is performing a naqid, from the nawaqid al-wudu. A naqid from nawaqid al-wudu. So for example, if a person, he's in prayer and something came out of as-sabilain, al-kharij min as-sabilain, what's the ruling for his prayer? Something came out, even if it's something light. For example, some bowl came out, a drop of urine. Or a drop of urine came out. What's the ruling for his salah? His salah is invalidated at that moment that he realized that. If some gas came out and he's certain about that, then what's the ruling for his salah? It's invalidated. Why? Why is it? How can you rule against this person's prayer? It's invalidated. Because his wudu is invalidated. Because these are from the nullifiers of the wudu, and the wudu is a condition. So the condition is that if it's not present, the ruling is not present. We've seen likewise in our review that the condition, it has to be present before beginning the prayer and continue until the end of the prayer. So even if a person, he brought it in the beginning of the prayer, but sometime throughout the prayer, before he finishes, he lost that condition, or that condition was nullified, now along with that the prayer is nullified. لأن الشرط ما يلزم من عدمه العدم ولا يلزم من وجوده وجود ولا عدم لذاته. This is important to understand these definitions, because based upon these issues here, it's clear to see how the ruling is derived. And then based upon that, to benefit from this knowledge in real life experience. Whenever a person, he himself is praying and some of these affairs happened, or whenever one of his children is praying and they asked the father about this affair, or the mother, or whenever the wife is praying and she asked her husband about this affair, he'll have the answer. He will know how to direct and guide, because he has knowledge which is light. Because he has knowledge which is light. So knowledge is light. So the more knowledge a person has, the further he can see, and the more clear he can see. So somebody who does not know these rulings whatsoever, what's the obligation for him to do? Is ask. فَاسْأَلُوا أَهْلَ الذِّكْرِ إِن كُنتُمْ لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. Ask the people of knowledge if you do not know. But if you do know, you don't have to ask the people of knowledge. So a person who knows these rulings here, now he has light and he's moving upon the straight path, upon insight. So this is something that he knows with certainty. So he will not have any doubts about what he's doing. He will be able to judge and base his judgment upon clear evidences in text, and he will know the ruling and how to move. And he will know the ruling and how to move, and he will not have to ask anybody because he has learned. Because he has learned. We understand that because he has light. So this is something that's very important. So a person who realizes these affairs and he learns in this manner and he fears Allah and he bases his judgment upon the light that he has and he doesn't go beyond that, then he will be given much good in this life and the hereafter. The problem is whenever a person he gets a big head and then now he learns a few rulings and now he tries to go beyond that which he has learned and speak about affairs that he's not certain or he has no knowledge of. This is the problem. So there's a fine line and it's dangerous for a person to traverse upon that way. But likewise, a person, he should not be negligent and be like, oh, I don't know the ruling. We have to call Sheikh so-and-so or Sheikh so-and-so whenever it's very clear. If somebody learned the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, لا يقبل الله صلاة أحدكم إذا أحدث حتى يتوضأ, that Allah, He does not accept the salat of one of you if he makes the hadith until he makes wudu. He learns that and he learns these rulings and he learns these conditions. It's kharij min as-sabilayn, naqid min nawaqid al-wudu, that something comes out of the two pathways. It will invalidate the wudu because that's called a hadith. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that indeed Allah, He does not accept the prayer of one of you if he makes a hadith until he makes wudu. So now he has this knowledge and is certain with him and he has no doubts about that. So therefore, whenever it happens to him or he's asked about that, he will be able to speak upon knowledge and speak upon certainty, and he should not be afraid to do that likewise. And he should not back down and abandon likewise somebody who's in need of that knowledge from him while he knows. And say, oh no, you have to go ask the scholar or you need to ask the sheikh. This is something that you already know. This is something that you already know. But if one is asked about something they do not already know, or they're in a circumstance themselves about something they do not already know, or something that they do not have certainty about, something that they did not study and did not learn, now they will have the wara'. Now they will have the piety and the fear of Allah, and they will go and ask. And they will go and ask. So the person who continues upon this path, little by little, gathering time after time, issue after issue, and principle after principle, and foundation after foundation, pretty soon he'll have a great light in his heart. And the one who has a great light in his heart, he'll be able to see much further, and likewise much clearer, and in turn likewise be a greater benefit for himself and for his family and the society and the Muslims. And likewise his chest will be greater, his heart will be greater. Many times people, they become tight and become upset or agitated, or they find themselves in problems and the likes like this because they do not have knowledge, and they may think that this is wrong and that is wrong, or he said something that's not right and this is not right, or how is he doing that, or why is he doing that, because they only know one aspect of something and they have learned in a manner where it's still on a black and white scale for them. But in reality, there's vast knowledge. Or they will learn, for example, the statement of one scholar, and they'll think that the whole deen of Islam is based upon that one statement, and the likes like this, and that's not the reality. And that's not the reality, especially with these affairs as we have seen, the al-masail al-fiqhiyya al-amaliyya, and the actions, and with regards to the actions and likes like this. So whenever a person he starts to learn and he sees more, then he will be able to have a bigger heart, and he's able to deal with these affairs and accept them and realize why they're happening, even if they're not correct, or even if there's a better position. Now he will know why certain things are happening, or certain people are doing certain things, either because they're blind following this madhab or that madhab, or he's following this hadith and there's a hadith that's stronger, or actually Sheikh so-and-so has declared that hadith to be unauthentic, and this is why he's basing his ruling on that. So he will have knowledge and he will know. He will have not knowledge and he will know. But the one who does not have knowledge, many times he will, because of his ignorance and hastiness likewise, and also because of not fearing Allah Azza wa Jal, he will declare everybody who disagrees with him to be an innovator. He will declare everyone who disagree, whoever doesn't pray like him, he's an innovator. Whoever doesn't put his feet like him, he's an innovator. Whoever doesn't raise his hand like him, he's an innovator, or he's misguided, or he's a hizbi. And the likes like this, and people are very quick to make these judgments, and this is because they have little light in reality. They have little light. They have little light. So no doubt they're innovators, and no doubt they're hizbis, and no doubt they're people of misguidance, but not everyone who disagreed with you on a particular issue in fiqh is from them. So this is something that's very, very important. The light will open your heart, and you'll be able to see these affairs. You'll be able to understand these affairs. So this is the point now. So a person, he learns these rulings, he's upon light, he's upon goodness. What about if a person now we've seen if the kharij from the sabilain came out. This is a naqid from nawaqid al-wudu. So, for example, if he passed gas in the middle of the prayer is invalidated. What is the ruling? What does he have to do? If it's an obligatory prayer, he has to make wudu and pray again. Ahsanta, very good. He has to make wudu and pray again, obligatory, because it's an obligatory prayer. And if it was a non-obligatory prayer, then it's recommended. It's recommended. This is the case here. What about the person who is in prayer and then his nose started bleeding profusely? That's what the author he mentioned. Al-Kharij al-Fahish. And that understanding would invalidate his wudu. But the majority of the scholars, they do not find that it invalidates the wudu. Whether they find that if a person, he had wudu, and then he had a strong nosebleed, it's recommended for him to make wudu, but not obligatory. The majority of the people of knowledge, they mention that because there's no clear evidence for the obligation of that. So it's one thing that something would be considered recommended, and it's another that it would be considered an obligation. So Allah knows best. There's no clear evidences to establish the obligation. And there's a great difference again between the obligation and the recommended, because the one who leaves off an obligation while he knows he's held accountable with Allah and he's sinning and transgressing the limits. But the one who left off something that's recommended while he knows, then this is not considered a sin, and he's not held accountable in front of Allah Azza wa Jal. So Allah knows best, and his prayer will be fine. He could continue. He could continue, and according to the opinion of the majority of the people of knowledge. That's the opinion of the majority of the scholars, that the profuse bleeding does not break the wudu. But what if he's outside of the prayer? In the prayer, he's in the prayer. And also, not to mention, with regards to the prayer and the other actions of worship, it's not recommended to leave them once starting. وَلَا تُبْطِلُوا أَعْمَالَكُمْ. Allah, He says, and do not invalidate your actions. And so many of the people of knowledge, they mention if a person, he begins to pray, if he sets off into an obligatory prayer, it's not allowed for him to just turn away from that and nullify that without any clear reason. A person, he will not start praying and then just stop praying and nullify his intention and leave the prayer for no reason or the likes like this, or whenever it's not needed. Many people that do this, they'll mess up in prayer, and then instead of fixing their prayer in a legislative manner and making sujood, they'll just leave the prayer and start over. Because they don't know what to do properly. So this is something not to do. Rather, there's a way to fix the prayer and to continue and not invalidate it any legislatively. So that was with regards to the prayer. And the prayer, that would happen. What about if he's outside of the prayer? He made wudu and he's about to pray, and then he got a nosebleed. And then he fixed his nosebleed. Now, what would he do?
Just to clean the blood.
The al-afdal is that he'll make wudu. Khuruj min al-khilaf. So what's best to do if he's in a situation outside of the prayer is, now he has time, now it's easy for him, he'll clean himself and then he'll make wudu. Why would he make wudu? To avoid the difference of opinion and to be in a state where all of the people of knowledge agree that his worship is proper, and then the shaitan will not be able to whisper with regards to this, so on and so forth, and his prayer will be performed upon clarity. We understand that? So this is all from the benefit of this affair. What about if he's praying and suddenly his daughter walks by and touches him? His daughter walks by and touches him in the prayer.
How old is she?
How old is she? Baligha.
It's okay.
What about his wife? He's praying and his wife comes by and accidentally touches him.
Walk by accident. It's okay.
No, she walks by him from behind and touches him. Yeah. No, not cutting the prayer, and she touches him.
That's okay.
If he touched her with shahwa. What if he's praying and he sees her and he reached over and he touches his wife?
That's okay. Hafsa touched Aisha when he was praying.
When he's praying. Allahu Akbar. Now, what do we mention about this? The author, he mentioned it here, right? Masul mar'ati bi shahwa. This invalidates the wudu. But what do we say about that? What do the majority of the scholars say about that? It doesn't invalidate the wudu. There's no clear evidence, likewise, with regards to this, that invalidates the wudu. Rather, there's clear evidence that it doesn't invalidate the wudu. that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he would kiss his wife, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and then he would go out to the prayer and not make wudu. He would kiss his wife, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and leave out to the prayer and not make wudu. This is what Aisha radiallahu anha, she mentioned. So that's clear. Likewise, he would be in the prayer, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he would reach out and touch her. He would reach out and touch her, and for her to move her legs.
Yeah.
For her to move her legs. And likewise, he would be in the prayer and she would reach out and touch him. Sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He will be in the prayer that she can't see in the house, and she'd look for where he's at, and she would reach out and find, and her hands would land on his heels, both of his heels. Sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So then this happened, and there was no mention of the fact that, or there's no mention of the issue of the invalidation of the wudu. So this will not invalidate the wudu. This will not invalidate the wudu. Even if a man, he touched a woman with intimacy. He touched a woman with intimacy. Will it invalidate the wudu?
No.
Huh? Long as nothing comes out from the sabil. So if he touched, even if he touched her with intimacy, but no madhi came out, or anything more than that, then he will still have his wudu. So touching a woman does not break the wudu in any manner, in any case. أو لمستم النساء يعني الجماع. This is referring to al-jima'. This is referring to al-jima'. So this is the case. That will not break the wudu. That will not break the wudu. What about if he touched his own privates? What if he touched his own privates? بدون هائل, if he put his hands in and inside of his thobe, no, this would invalidate. What did we say the majority of the people of knowledge mentioned? It would invalidate the wudu. The hadith al-talq, what was that? There's a number of answers. There's a number of answers. We spoke about that, remember? What were they? Some of the answers for that hadith. It's mansukh. Some of the people of knowledge mentioned it's mansukh, that talq. Even this hadith mentioned that he came, this happened whenever they're building the masjid in Al-Medina, in the very beginning of the coming of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam to Al-Medina, and after that he returned back to his people. So this happened in the first of Al-Medina. In the hadith of Busra is mentioned that this happened and occurred later. So therefore, from this aspect, they said that ruling has been abrogated. Another answer to that hadith is that a number of the people of knowledge mentioned that it's weak. And in any case, even those who authenticated, they mentioned that the hadith of Busra is more authentic. الصح شيء في الباب. الصح من حديث طلق. So then they make tarjih. And they say this hadith takes precedence over that one.
What is the other hadith?
Hadith Busra. من مس ذكره فليتوضأ. من مس ذكره فليتوضأ. من مس فرجه فليتوضأ. من مس ذكره فلا يصلي حتى يتوضأ. هذه الحديث الصحيحة عن بسرة بنت صفوان رضي الله عنها, وهي الصح من حديث طلق. So from this aspect, they show preference to this hadith. Others, they mention also that the hadith of talq, this is has been mentioned, that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was asked about a man, he touches his private in salah, and some of the wordings in salah. So it's not really, Allah knows best. They understood that meaning he touched his private from on top of his garment. And that's what they understood from that. So therefore, the Prophet ﷺ said what he said, it doesn't break the wudu. So no doubt if he touched his private from on top of the garment, it doesn't break the wudu. But the hadith of Busra is very clear. And even likewise, other narrations by Abu Hurairah radiyallahu anhu likewise. إذا أفضى أحدكم إلى ذكره بيده ليس بينه وبينها حجاب فقد وجب الوضوء. That if a man he put his hand to his private and there's nothing between the two of them, and then the wudu is an obligation. So from this aspect, this will break the wudu. So if a person, he put his hands while he's in the middle of the prayer, and inside of his stove, for example, and he touched his private, he touched the dhakr, then this will invalidate the wudu. We understand this part. This is what we benefit from this affair. What about if a person, for example, he ate camel meat and forgot? And then he went and prayed. And after he prayed, or in the middle of the prayer, he remembered. he ate camel meat. He ate camel meat, and then he got up and prayed. He did not make wudu. And in the middle of the prayer, he remembered. No, this one is the wudu is invalidated because of the two hadith that are clear with regards to that. With regards to that, the narrations that have come clarifying the obligation of making wudu from eating the camel meat. So this will invalidate the wudu. This will invalidate the salah because he did not bring the condition. Because he did not bring the condition. We understand this. What about if he washed the deceased and then after that he went to prayer? He had wudu, he washed the deceased, and then after that he went to prayer. His prayer is good. Why?
Because there is a hadith weak.
Because there is no clear evidence that this is that the wudu is an obligation. The hadith actually there's a hadith that's authentic, but it was with regards to ghusl. Man ghassala maytan falyaghtasil. Whoever washed the deceased, and let him make ghusl. But it was narrated by Ibn Umar, and likewise by Ibn Umar, and also by Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhum, that both of them they mentioned the same thing. Ibn Umar, he said that we used to wash the deceased, and we used to, meaning in the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, or in the time of the khulafa, and some of us will make ghusl and others will not make ghusl, an indication that they understood this narration to not be an obligation. And then likewise Ibn Abbas, he mentioned the same thing, that you don't have to make ghusl. It suffices you to wash your hands. Your dead is not najis, not whenever they're dead nor whenever they're alive. So this was the understanding of the Sahaba with regards to that narration, that it was not an obligation. Some of them would and some of them wouldn't. So therefore this is the clear evidence that what is understood from that, it's recommended. It's recommended to make wudu or to make ghusl after washing the deceased, but it's not an obligation. So therefore it doesn't break the wudu. So if a person, he washed the deceased and then he didn't make wudu and he was upon wudu, then he washed the deceased and then he went and prayed. And then he remembered, oh, I just washed the deceased.
He's okay to continue.
He's okay, he just keeps going. It doesn't harm him whatsoever because this does not invalidate the wudu. This does not invalidate the wudu. Similar though, what if he's outside of the prayer and he washed? It's recommended for him to go ahead and to make ghusl, or to go ahead at least and to make wudu, but it's not an obligation. But if he did that, it's good. If he did that, it's good. So we understand this point now. So this is the case with regards to the condition. These are the examples of that. So this one condition here, which was the fourth condition, which was raful hadith, right? The hadith must be removed. So any time there's a hadith in the middle of the prayer, then the prayer is invalidated. All of these are going to be considered from the nawaqid. This is going to remove, they're going to bring the hadith. You understand that? These are going to invalidate the wudu. So he will be upon a hadith. He would have to raise that. So if that hadith comes, or if these nawaqid they come, then the prayer is invalidated.
Before you leave that subject, can we ask a question? Except at the time when the Prophet had it on his shoes and it wasn't on him, he stepped out of it. That's a different occasion.
This is hadith here. So the hadith is a non-tangible reality. It's a description that's in the body. It's a description that a person he will have. He's described to be upon a hadith, and the hadith is minor and the hadith is major. So the minor hadith is a description. The hadith, who remembers the definition of hadith? وصف قائم بالبدن يمنع من الصلاة ونحوها مما يشترط له طهارة. That a hadith is a description that will be established in the body. It prohibits a person from praying and performing other actions. That prayer is a condition for its tahara is a condition for its correctness. So that's with regards to the fourth condition. The fourth condition is the hadith, raful hadith. The other aspect of tahara which you're referring to is zawal al-khabith. That's the fifth condition that we're about to go to, inshallah. The fifth condition that we are about to go to. So the fourth and the fifth condition, they were with regards to at-tahara. Remember when we began the fourth condition, we took a brief introduction into At-tahara. We took the definition of at-tahara. What was the definition of at-tahara? Linguistically. الطهارة هي النظافة النظافة نعم والنزاهة عن الأقدار الحسية والمعنوية الحسية والمعنوية الطهارة هي النظافة cleanliness والنزاهة نزاهة also is to be clean and to be away from الأقدار الحسية والمعنوية the filth the spirit the tangible filth the physical filth and the spiritual filth. This is called tahara. This is called tahara. A person who will purify himself from feces and from urine and from other filth. And likewise, before that, he will purify his heart from shirk and hypocrisy and loving that which Allah detests and the likes like this and the lowly manners like jealousy and envy and pride and self-amazement. And this will be purified. That's tahara. But whenever we're in the first chapter, the fourth condition, we're talking about the legislative meaning. What was that? رفع الحدث وما في معناه وزوال الخبث. رفع الحدث وما في معناه وزوال الخبث. That was the tahara. The tahara shar'an. رفع الحدث. That's what the author he says. الشرط الرابع. رفع الحدث وهو الوضوء المعروف. رفع الحدث. That's the definition. The first the definition of tahara in the legislation has two parts. So far we touched on one part. All those previous classes and in the past 4 classes approximately before the review were all related to that one condition. And in the author he mentioned these issues in detail. And there's a lot of issues, masail related to this particular condition, indicating its importance. So رفع الحدث وما في معناه, to raise the hadith. To raise the hadith, and we've seen the definition of the hadith. It's that description that prohibits the salah and the likes of salah from that which tahara is a condition for its correctness. So that this raful hadith, وَمَا فِي مَعْنَاهُ, and that which has the same meaning of removing the hadith. What was that? رفع الحدث وما في معناه, removing the hadith and that which is understood to have the same meaning as the hadith. And this is the definition of a tahara. So removing the hadith, that means to make wudu if it's minor, and to make ghusl if it's major. If it's major. وَمَا فِي مَعْنَاهُ, and that which has the meaning of removing the hadith. تجديد الوضوء. أحسنت. تجديد الوضوء. So a person, he already has wudu, so he doesn't have a hadith. He made wudu at dhuhr time, and he prayed dhuhr, and he stayed upon the same wudu all the way to asr time. But at asr time he wanted to renew his wudu, which is recommended, but it's not an obligation. Is there a hadith there? There's no hadith there. So he went and made wudu. Is that called tahara? But there's no hadith. So that's why the people of knowledge, they say it's that tahara is raful hadith wa ma fi ma'nahu, to include this issue here. This teaches us the diligence and the precision of the people of knowledge in these definitions, that based upon them rulings are derived. There's no room left for error or misunderstanding or confusion. Rather, it's a precise definition, including everything that's included and excluding everything that's not included. Yani jami' mani'. So raful hadithi wa ma fi ma'nahu, to remove the hadith and everything and that which has the same meaning. So a person, he renewed the wudu. So there's no hadith there, but it's still considered tahara, meaning an action of worship. So all of this is considered in the definition of a tahara. Raf'ul hadithi wa ma fi ma'nahu. That particular first portion of the definition has all proceeded in condition number 4. The second definition, or the second part of the definition of tahara, is wazawal al-khabith. Wazawal al-khabith, and to remove the filth. And the meaning that what is intended by the khabith is an-najasa. Zawal al-khabith yani an-najasa, to remove the najasa. So that's what the author, he's moving on to now with the fifth condition. And he says, rahimahullah ta'ala, الشرط الخامس إزالة النجاسة. الشرط الخامس إزالة النجاسة. The fifth condition, removing النجاسة. من ثلاث, from 3 things. من البدن والثوب والبقعة, from the body and from the garments and from the place where one is praying. and from the place where one is praying. So the najasa are the impurities, yani like feces and urine, and like the saliva of the dog, and the pig, and the likes like this. These things are considered najisa. These things are considered najisa. And the main one that concerns us here, or the one that would concern us most or generally, is the feces and the urine. Is the feces and the urine. So these things have to be removed. This is a condition of the salah. This is a condition of the salah. Izalatu najasa. So before a person he prays, he has to make sure that there's no impurities. He has to make sure that there's no impurities from three things: from his body, from his clothing, and from the place where he's going to pray at. From the place where he's going to pray at. And he says, what dalilu qawluhu ta'ala, and the evidence for this is the statement of Allah the Most High, وَثِيَابَكَ فَطَهِرْ وَثِيَابَكَ فَطَهِرْ, and your garments, then you must purify. Yani ya Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. So we have discussed before the issue of al-istinja, right? And al-istijmar, and that is with regards to removing the najasa, yani from the hadith. From the hadith. So we have taken a number of narrations with regards to that. So all those narrations are evidences for this issue here, that najasa must be removed. Those evidence, they were referring to the issue of istinja when we were mentioning them before, but also in those same evidences, is the obligation of making that istinja, and that is izalatu najasa. The istinja or the istijmar is removing those impurities. So those are evidences for this issue here, that they must be removed, like he says, min al-badin, from the body. From the body. Likewise, it's been corrected by Daraqutni, rahimahullah, from the hadith of Abi Hurairah radiyallahu anhu, that the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he said, تَنَزَّهُ عَنْ الْبَوْلِ فَإِنَّ عَامَةَ عَذَابِ الْقَبْرِ مِنْهُ فَإِنَّ عَامَةَ عَذَابِ الْقَبْرِ مِنْهُ, that you must purify and cleanse yourself and be free from urine. And be free from urine, because the majority of the punishment of the grave is from that. The majority of the punishment of the grave is from that. So this is an evidence likewise that he must purify himself from these impurities. So if that's the case with the urine, then likewise the feces as well. All of the impurities, they must be purified. They must be purified from the body. They must be purified from the body. Likewise from the clothing as well. From the clothing as well. And it has come in the hadith of Asma radiallahu anha that the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam told her about the woman whenever the blood comes on her clothing. The Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam told her تَحُتُّهُ ثُمَّ تَقْرُصُهُ بِالْمَاءِ ثُمَّ تُصَلِّ فِيهِ, that she has to scratch the blood off and rub it with water and clean it good, and then after that she can pray in it. So this is an evidence for the obligation of cleansing the clothing likewise. Also from the place, the author he mentions, min thalath, izalatu najasa min thalath, removing the najasa, the impurities, from three. The first one was the badan, the body. The second one was the thawb, the garment. And the third one is al-buq'ah. Al-buq'ah yani al-makan alladhi yusalli fihi, the place where he's praying. And we all know the hadith which is muttafaqun alayhi of Anas radiyallahu anhu, and al-Arabi alladhi bala fi ta'ifatin min al-masjid. Whenever the desert Arab he came and he passed urine in a corner of the masjid. And the companions, فَزَجَرَهُ النَّاسِ, the companions, they reprimanded him and scolded him. And the Prophet ﷺ said, leave him, until he finished. And then after that, the Prophet ﷺ أَمَرَ بِهِ ذَنُوبٍ مِّن مَّاءٍ فَأُحْلِقَ عَلَيْهِ. The Prophet ﷺ ordered for a big pail or bucket of water to be brought, and that it should be poured on the urine. It should be poured on the urine. So this is a clarification that the places of prayer, they have to be purified and they have to be cleansed. They have to be purified and they have to be cleansed. With regards to the body, it's clear. Anywhere in the body, if it's there, it has to be removed with water. Or if it gets on the thawb, likewise, it has to be removed with water. And if it's in the place of prayer also, it has to be removed as well. It has to be removed as well. And what is intended from that is it's going to be in the place where he is standing, like from his feet to his place of prostration, in this area. As for if it's behind him or beyond that, if it happened to be behind him or beyond that, inshallah, it will not affect the prayer. But the place, in the immediate place from where his feet are to where he's going to prostrate, this area has to be purified. It has to be cleaned. If it just, for example, was possibly right behind his feet, from a child or the likes, then this will not harm. Or beyond his head and the likes like this will not harm him. This will not harm him. We understand this part? This is the area that has to be cleaned. This is the area that has to be cleaned. The author, he also used the evidence here, the statement of Allah the Most High, وَثِيَابَكَ فَطَهِّرْ وَثِيَابَكَ فَطَهِّرْ. الثِياب جمع ثوب, yani your garments, you must purify them. O Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. The scholars of hadith from the companions radiallahu anhum and those after them from the tabi'in, they have different interpretations of what is intended from this verse. وَثِيَابَكَ فَطَهِّرْ. And a number of them mentioned that the word thiyab here is in reference to the heart and in reference to the spiritual state of a person. The statement of Allah Azza wa Jal, وَثِيَابَكَ فَطَهِّرْ. Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhuma, he mentioned min al-itham, وَثِيَابَكَ, and your garments, فَطَهِّرْ, purify them. Purify them. You must purify your garments, he says, from sin. From sin. And likewise, Ibrahim al-Naqai, he mentioned the same thing. And Mujahid, he said, نَفْسَكَ لَيْسَ ثِيَابَكَ. And nafsa, what is intended, yani nafsaka. وَثِيَابَكَ, yani your soul, yourself, your heart. Purify your heart. He's saying this is what is intended here. Yani also Mujahid, he said, عَمَلَكَ فَأَصْلِحْ. This is what is intended. Your deeds, then rectify them. Then your deeds, then rectify them. This is very similar to what the author, he mentioned in Usul al-Thalatha. In Usul al-Thalatha. Remembers that? وَثِيَابَكَ فَطَاهِرْ. الطاهر أعمالك عن الشرك. Purify your deeds from shirk. And this was in the third principle. صح? In the third principle. Now, with regards to believing in the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, وَثِيَابَكَ فَطَاهِرْ. So, a number of the scholars from the Sahaba and the Tabi'in, they mention this meaning. Qatada, he says, طَهِرْهَا مِنْ الْمَعَاصِي. Purify your garments from sins and disobedience, and he meaning purify your soul from disobedience. On the other hand, likewise, others from the Salaf, they mentioned the literal meaning, that which is apparent, and that has been mentioned from Ibn Sirin rahimahullah. He said, اغسلها بالماء. Purify your clothes with water. So from here, this is an evidence for the author and this issue. So now if we think about the author and Surah Thalatha, he's mentioning one interpretation to be in accordance with the issue of creed and tawheed, وَطَahir أَعْمَالَكَ, and the shirk. You purify your deeds from paganism. Here he's using it as an evidence for the physical purity. We see that? And if we look into what the scholars of the Sunnah have mentioned from Ibn Abbas and his students, likewise Mujahid, and then also Qatada, then those after from them, likewise Ibn Sirin and Ibn Zayd, they have the same understanding. So Ibn Sirin, he says, اغسلها بالماء. And Ibn Zayd, he says, كان المشركون لا يتطهرون فأمره الله أن يتطهر وأن يطهر ثيابه. That the pagans, they did not used to purify themselves, any of their clothing and their bodies. So Allah ordered him, and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, to purify himself and to purify his garments. So Ibn Kathir, he mentioned these affairs here, and he mentioned that this opinion here, or this position here, was the position of Ibn Jarir الطبري رحمه الله. But he says قد تشمل الآية جميع ذلك مع طهارة القلب فإن العرب تطلق الثياب عليه. So Ibn Kathir, he's of the opinion that all of this is intended and all of these meanings are correct, that this understanding is mentioned here from all of these aspects, and that the Arab, they use the words garment, the thiyab, to refer to the heart also. So therefore both meanings are correct. And even if we look at it min babi awla, if a person is ordered to purify his garments from filth, then his heart has more right to be purified in his soul from shirk, from paganism and polytheism, from loving that which is detestable to Allah Azza wa Jal, and from disbelief and hypocrisy, and from all of the foul and lowly traits. And so if a person, he had a beautiful and clean garment on, but his heart was filthy with disbelief or with sin and transgression, and the love of that which is displeasing to Allah Azza wa Jal, that garment would not benefit him. So both meanings are correct, and Allah knows best. And this is from the aspect of people of knowledge, as they mentioned, من باب اختلاف التنوع. Any difference of opinion, each of these interpretations are different, but they're not in opposition to each other. So all of them are considered correct, and this is one aspect of the interpretation of this verse. So this verse here is understood in more than one light, and all of them are correct. And all of them are correct. And there are a number of verses that are like this, a number of statements from the Sahaba radiallahu anhum and the Tabi'een, from the Sahaba and the Tabi'een and the likes radiallahu anhum, in this manner. You will find that their statements differ in the interpretation of a particular verse. But in pondering over them and reflecting, you find that there's no difference in between them in reality. And one of them is understood in one light, and another is understood in another light. Or they'll interpret one aspect of the verse, and the verse is very encompassing and full of meanings. And they understood or interpreted only one aspect of that meaning. And another, he will interpret another aspect of that meaning. And another, he will interpret another aspect of that meaning. Like, for example, Allah Azza wa Jal, He says in the supplication of the righteous, رَبَّنَا آتِنَا فِي الدُّنْيَا حَسَنَةً. رَبَّنَا آتِنَا فِي الدُّنْيا حَسَنَةً. If we look into the tafsir of the Salaf, he will find a number. One of them will say, a righteous woman. آتنا في الدنيا, the hasana and dunya, what is all I give is that which is good in this life. One of them he'll say a righteous woman, another one he'll say beneficial knowledge, another one he'll say this, another one he'll say that, and all of them are intended and included in the understanding. So this is not in contradiction or confliction, rather it's in harmony, and each one has interpreted one aspect of the verse. Inshallah, we continue tomorrow. هذا وصلى الله على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم.